Well, there we have it. The official verdict of the FIA says that Red Bull were indeed in breach of the $145 million cost cap for the 2021 season. Although the Austrian team came out with a statement saying that they were utterly surprised by this verdict, it doesn't deny the fact that they did spend more money than allowed. According to reports, the budget cap breach from Red Bull was estimated as a minor one, meaning they only spent less than 5% of the original cap amount. But Red Bull's rivals were absolutely fuming about the FIA's decision to label this breach as a minor one. What did they have to say about this decision? And what's even more important, what's next for Red Bull and Mercedes, the two main protagonists for the title in 2021? These questions and many more are going to be answered in our video, so make sure to stay here until the very end. But before we dive deep into the budget cap saga that revolves around Red Bull, make sure to subscribe to our channel, like our video and turn on the notification button. As you're already familiar with, the budget cap serves as one of the FIA's main weapons in making the F1 sport as equal and fair as possible to any participant out there. It was implemented in 2021, and prior to its implementation, the teams were allowed to spend as much money as they could possibly in order to bring a variety of upgrades to their cars. That way, the top teams that had a huge amount of sponsorships and therefore a huge amount of money were easily dominating weekend after weekend. Not that this had necessarily changed when the budget cap was invented per se, but we've seen a much closer battle between the midfield teams. And on top of that, the top teams are now calculating where they can bring upgrades and what kind of upgrades will they bring, given the fact that they don't have the liberty of spending whatever they feel like it. That way, the sum of the maximal amount of money that could be spent in a season was $145 million for the 2021 season, $140 million for the 2022 season, and is estimated to be $135 million for the 2023 season. The sheds that the FIA plans to implement on the budget cap, and has already implemented for the 2022 season, are with a unique goal, and that is to make the top teams spend even less money than the original $145 million from 2021 in order to make their car competitive. We've seen that Red Bull has caused a breach in the first season that the budget cap was invented, alongside Aston Martin and Williams. However, the latter two aren't really substantial to the case because they weren't in the championship fight toe-to-toe with Hamilton. We know how Red Bull won the championship with Verstappen in a very controversial way that saw Massey being sacked as the race director, and a variety of changes were implemented into the sport just because of that one race in Abu Dhabi in 2021. Now, the fact that Red Bull spent more money than allowed is going to be a very serious topic that will be widely discussed across the grid, but there are much bigger concerns than the chitty chat that is going to go behind Red Bull's back, and that is the repercussions that the team will face. Do you like what you're seeing as of now? Remember, hit the subscribe button, like our video and turn on the bell notification before we continue with our video. So now that Red Bull has been found guilty of breaching the budget cap, what happens next? Since the breach is considered a minor one, meaning that the team spent around $7.25 million maximum over the limit, the consequences are highly unlikely to be severe. Well, this is one of the reasons why Red Bull rivals are really fuming with the FIA's decision to just label the breach as a minor one, because according to them, even a sum of around $200,000 to $300,000 could make a huge difference between a championship winning car or not. According to rumors, Red Bull have spent around $1 or $2 million over the allowance. So public reprimands are what they'll most likely receive as a penalty. However, this does not sit well with its rivals, especially Mercedes, who fought a very hard battle with the Austrian team and eventually lost it in the Drivers' Championship at the end of the season in the very last race at the very last lap of the season. This would be equal to a salt to the wound, because now it's very clear that Red Bull broke the principal rule of the F1, and that is to not go over a certain amount of money that was set as a limit by the FIA. Lewis Hamilton spoke about this matter, saying that if his team could spend $300,000 more last year, then they would surely have a much more dominant car in some of the races, therefore having a closer shot at the championship. Wolff was also one to speak about this matter extensively, and prior to the Singapore GP, the Austrian added, if you're spending $5 million more and you're still in a minor breach, it still has a big impact on the championship. To give you an idea, we obviously monitor closely which parts are being brought to the track from the top teams every single race, 2021 season and 2022 season. We can see that there are two top teams that are just about the same, and there is another team that spends more. So we know exactly that we're spending $3.5 million a year in parts that we bring to the car. And then you see what difference it makes to spend another $500,000? It would be a difference. We haven't produced lightweight parts for the car in order to bring us down down from a double-digit overweight because we simply haven't got the money. So we need to do it for next year's car. We can't homologate a lightweight chassis and bring it in because it's just $2 million that will be over the cap. So you can see every spend more has a performance advantage. Finished Wolf. One could see why Wolf is angry, and with all the right reasons to be so. In a season when teams were battling with the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's crucial to stay within the budget cap limits and just make sure not to spend a dime over those $145 million. Some teams don't even have half the budget of the $145 million that all teams have as a limit, and to spend more than that is just straight disrespectful to the FIA and to the long-term health of the sport. Here comes our second point, and that is how the FIA treated Red Bull's alleged breach. The transparency hasn't been something that they could brag along with, and it's something that doesn't sit right with Red Bull's top rivals, especially Ferrari. The fact that the decision was postponed for almost a week made Ferrari and Mercedes think that Red Bull and the FIA are going to try to hide some of the financial bills in order to stay within the budget cap in the aftermath. The FIA has offered little insight into the scale and motives of the Red Bull breach, and for all we know, it could be a minor overspending, the result of a small paperwork delay and innocent spending involving sick pay and gardening leave payments. Yet again, the lack of transparency of the FIA is what makes us believe that Red Bull are indeed in trouble, and the fact that the breach has been labeled as a minor one just goes to show that repercussions are unlikely to be severe ones, but in the form of public reprimands or taking away wind tunnel time. Ferrari is one of the teams that has constantly called upon the FIA to approach this case with full transparency and to make an example out of Red Bull's case so that other teams will know what they're going to face if they commit a similar breach. The fact that the delay in the official decision has happened could be a vital sign of fudging paperwork, blocking investigations, and deliberately finding ways around the cost cap just to ensure that Red Bull can spend more on car development than its rivals. And rest assured that Ferrari expects this matter to be solved in a regular, transparent manner because they've been one of the loudest voices when it comes to Red Bull's upgrades in the 2022 season too. Although Ferrari haven't said anything after the FIA's verdict on Red Bull's budget cap, Binotto was really vocal when Red Bull announced its new monocoque for the Singapore GP, saying that if it was for the Maranello team, they wouldn't be implementing as many upgrades due to the budget cap. I myself have no idea what they're doing, whether they have a lighter chassis or not, but the budget cap is always a concern. In addition to technical and sporting regulations, we also have to deal with financial regulations, and that can also cause differences between the teams purely by how those regulations are interpreted. We need a strong FIA who is on top of this, because otherwise those rules are not fair and equal for everyone. But as I said, I can't judge Red Bull to lighter chassis and whether they have it or not, but I do know that Ferrari couldn't do that because of the budget cap, said Binotto, who continued to speak about other teams' possibility to do what Red Bull has done, adding, "I would be very surprised if another team turns out to be able to do that, and if it is, then we come back to the regulations. Are they fair enough? Do they see equal enough for everyone? And is it adequately monitored? These are big question marks. The rules are still very new and are only checked by a small number of people, so that has to be improved with a view to the future. It would be a bad thing if the championship is determined by financial regulations and not through a technological battle," finished Binotto. With that being said, what do you think about Red Bull's breach? Do you think that they should be handed a proper penalty? Let us know in the comments below.